Hey, this is Rita Batchley, and you're watching Coffee with the Nurse's Nurse, where you're going to get tips and strategies on how to infuse the healthcare system with self care, because you can't give away something you don't have. And today, I'm really super stoked about what we have to be, what I have to be so grateful for. Nurses, are nurses being heard? Nurse power, how nurses are changing the way we're being treated and thanked. And last week was the Nurses Week, and Nurses Day started out May 6th, and it ended the last day of last week, well, May 13th, actually. But a lot happened last week. I can't believe, like, all the news. Seems like, first of all, we had the National Nurses March in Washington, D.C. on May 12th. And on May 13th was the sentencing of Radana Vaught, the nurse who was found guilty of manslaughter. And wow, the big issues, and also a lot going on in Congress right now. So stick around, and because we're going to be getting into a lot more changes that are coming up as the result of you nurses out there waking up and telling the truth about hospital greed and what nurses really want and need to take care of their patients. And a big shout out to Nurse Blake. Nurse Blake out there. He's hilarious. If you haven't had a chance to check out Nurse Blake, I'm going to give him a thumbs up. He did a really funny podcast on the examples of crappy nurses gifts that are out there. And I want to say, gifts are never something that we demand or are given to us because, we're demanding that people give us stuff. I mean, it's always nice to get gifts, but not when they're so snarky and sneerful as they have been for nurses. Like, it's just this running joke that administration and hospitals cannot say thank you with dignity and respect to nurses. It's like getting a pat on the head. Good nurse, good girl. It's rude. And it gives nurses a message that they're not being heard about what's really missing in healthcare today, which for nurses, safe staffing, support for new nurses, charges against criminals who assault nurses. Instead, they get these things like, "Oh, you're terrific," and you get like a bag of tea. Or one that was really hilarious was the Reese's peanut butter cup. Have we told you recently how much we appreciate you? Well, not with a Reese's peanut butter cup. Or what about a lollipop that has a sticker on it that says it's for days that suck? Because you know that most days as a nurse suck because you don't have enough nurses to take care of your patients. And what about that leftover pizza box in the refrigerator that all the ships like have been through, and by the time you got there on night shift, you got this leftover cold pizza? Like, that's a really nice gift. But one of the worst ones that took the cake for me was an email sent by administration to all of the nursing staff giving their appreciation. But there was a button that each nurse had to press that confirmed that they had received their letter of appreciation, because magnet hospitals require hospitals to do surveys to see if about if nurses are satisfied or feel appreciated. Like, what worse case scenario? You're supposed to send a thank you for Nurses Week, and it comes wrapped up in a special accreditation for the hospital for their magnet program, which, by the way, is just, magnet hospitals are supposed to recruit and retain by nursing excellence, but they don't support safe staffing or protections for whistleblowers. And the nurses do all the work to get the accreditation. And then the hospitals reap the benefit by getting great reviews. And then more patients want to go there because, yeah, what makes a great hospital are great nurses. But showing nurses that you're hearing them by giving them a Reese's peanut butter cup, that's just not cutting it anymore. But what is cutting it is that nurses are waking up and being heard, because the dynamics are changing. Nurses are shifting out of this complacency or just this busyness, that they are too busy to stick up for themselves and be heard. One way that nurses are using their power to change how they're being treated or thanked is the nurse voice is on the rise. And one way that this happened this week was when nurse Rodonda Vaught, she had her sentencing. So they went from the National March into, a lot of nurses showed up on the 13th, the next day, in Tennessee at the hearing for Rodonda, because she was being sentenced for criminal charges of involuntary manslaughter. And it was really bad news that she got tried as a criminal. She was tried, as you might remember, back in March. She was found guilty of giving the wrong medication, and the patient died. Well, it should have never went to criminal charges, and nurses all over the country supported her. And here is just what happened here. Over 200,000 letters of support were written to support this clemency, which is leniency of the sentencing. I had to look that word up, clemency, because a lot of stuff I don't know about law, and mistakes don't equal murder. And so nurses showed up for that. 200,000 people signed the petition on change.org, and thousands of letters of support were written and sent to the judge. I had posted this on a different video or vlog that I did, and it had the petition, if you could see number 2, to sign the petition, but also to send a letter to Judge Smith, Jennifer Smith. She said she was going to throw the book at Vaught, but then after she got inundated, her office just had piles and piles of letters on there from nurses, caregivers, people all over the country saying that they smelled a rat, because it went through civil court, but the DA, who was politically related to Vanderbilt Hospital, where the nurse worked, decided to charge her after the hospital got in trouble because they didn't do their due diligence. So long story short, the judge said she was going to throw the book at Vaught, but she didn't. She gave her 3 years of probation, and much of that time has already been served. And after this probation, if everything goes well, Rodonda Vaught will have the opportunity to have her record expunged, which means that this will be erased from her record. So she will not have a criminal record, which is such a sigh of relief for so many nurses who are just been out of their minds in worrying and fear that this could have been them. when a hospital doesn't support their staff, that's just awful. And one of the ways that nurses also supported Redonda, and what happened was they went on to the Vanderbilt University website and they left reviews, and also left reviews for the magnet redesignation to tell the American Nurses Association, the accreditation department, that a hospital that treats their nurse that way does not deserve to get a 5-star rating. And here's one of the ratings. I circled it right here. And it's really small, so I'm putting my glasses on. To every nurse out there looking for a job, don't work here at Vanderbilt Medical Center. And if you work here, don't ever override a medication, because that was part of the deal, that she didn't override and rush to give this medicine that was fatal. And that the crowd outside was just like cheering, and just people were crying. It was a really emotional day for nurses, because nurses are waking up, and I couldn't be happier. There are 4 million nurses out there in this country, and nurses are taking action to teach the public that they're tired of a system that calls them heroes and then heartlessly throws them under the bus when they need protections from workplace violence, unsafe staffing ratios, and corporate greed. The National Nurses March showed up. There were 3,000 nurses on the boulevard that day. And it's in my picture on my thumbnail here. You could see, well, on the bottom of the screen, there were nurses. And this is from the National Nurses March Facebook page. And then here's a picture of all the nurses. There were over 3,000 nurses who showed up that day on May 12th, last Thursday, Florence Nightingale's birthday. Nurses went into the Capitol to speak to senators and congressmen, but they weren't given audience with them, which could mean, and it happens a lot. I have actually gone to Congress. I have lobbied for nurses' rights, and I have been with several groups. And rarely did we get to meet the congressman or the senator. We were met with their assistant, but we were treated politely. We were allowed to speak our truth about what was going on for different legislation. And mostly this was during when California got their safe staffing ratios. And I did that years ago, and I would do it again because it was a good experience. So nurses went in there, but one of the things that really disturbed me was the press refused to follow the event properly. They said on different channels, and I'm not sure if it was NBC or one of the bigger or lesser channels, but they said that nurses were there to mourn the loss of their coworkers from COVID. And that was so wrong. And that just goes to show why you need to keep supporting YouTubers like me and other people in social media who are out there putting this truth out there, because people really want to know what's going on. So share this with your friends. And I'll put my little banner up. You can share it with your friends, and go to my YouTube channel and subscribe and share this so we could get the word out. What's going on in healthcare today? You YouTubers like me, we're going to keep on telling the truth, and we're going to share, and we're going to tell you what's really going on. And one of the things that the nurses said that I caught were, we need professional lobbyists to represent us in Congress. And I'm like, we already have that. It's called unions. And the National Nurses United posted a big win for legislature, and that was for violence against nurses. And that was a huge win. And it was also on May 12th. And I got a letter from the president of the union, which is Jean Ross, the president of National Nurses United. And she said, that it's a real grassroots movement, that healthcare workers are reporting of being punched, kicked, bitten, and all kinds of horrible things going on. And there's no laws to protect them. I have this link right here, bit.ly. It's in the right upper hand corner. Sign on to prevent workplace violence against healthcare workers. It's bit.ly/3S, capital D, 8, capital Q, R, capital A. And if you go on there, you can sign the petition for the Violence Against Healthcare Worker petition to help with getting laws passed that would end or help nurses with workplace violence. And then lastly on the agenda is the Safe Nursing Act, the legislation that's going before Congress. It was adopted last year in May on Nurses Day, and it's still in Congress now, and it needs a lot of support because we're up against huge hospital organizations. It's the Hospital Association, American Hospital Association. And guess who backs them up? The American Nurses Association. And that is why when you go to the American Nurses Association website, what they have on safe staffing ratios is their answer is get more educators. Let's get more nurses out there. Well, I say there aren't enough educators, first of all. Second of all, there's 4 million nurses in this country. There are enough nurses. If we're treated better, we get good paying jobs with benefits, and we're treated with the respect and dignity of being listened to of what we need for our patients, the nurses will stay at the bedside because once a nurse, always a nurse. I really like being a nurse, but to get me back at the bedside would really take some doing here with what's been going on in healthcare. And so there's 4 million nurses, and I checked the statistics. I actually wrote to the American Nurses Association, and they said there are 225,000 nurses in the American Nurses Association, dues paying members. On their website, they say they represent 4 million nurses. Well, yeah, I guess they represent them by saying that they are all for nursing, but their membership is 225,000. And the National Nurses United have about 225,000 paying members. So that leaves only about 10% of all nurses are actually belonging to a union. So I'm encouraging you and everyone out there to join one, because you can become what they call you can have membership, and this is called, let's see, it's an annual membership to the National Nurses United. So if your hospital is not organized and you can actually become a member. Annual membership fee, yep. And I belong to this, and I also belong to the American Nurses Association. And I want to be part of a network that maintains this change and calls, other nurses out there to work together and work for stuff like this, like safe staffing. Like, I love this because I put it in red. Hospitals must post a notice regarding nurse to patient ratios in each unit and maintain records of actual ratios for each shift in each unit. Because that, to me, is golden. That would be the best nurses' day, week, month, year, decade of the century. If nurses were given this type of respect to say our acuities, the way when we do an assessment and we say how much care a patient needs, and we're actually listened to, like as scientists and as human rights activists. Like my mom was in a nursing home during COVID. She actually had to call me and in tears from New York to Oregon, where I live, and ask me to call the nurses station so they can help to pull her up in bed. Oh, do you know how that broke my heart? Like that is just horrible. And I gotta say that, this was during the height of COVID, but now that COVID is on the downside and it's becoming an endemic and getting away from being a pandemic, we don't have to live in crisis mode anymore. We need to stand up and be heard and get on board with each other so that we can teach others how we want to be treated and how we want to be thanked. Because I don't need another tea bag. I don't need a Reese's peanut butter cup. I need safe patient care. I want to show up at work and know that I'm not going to be assaulted. So please keep showing up here. Share this with your friends and family. Go on to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button and keep supporting this type of media, because we need to hear the truth of what's going on and be encouraging and supportive of one another. I'm the nurse's nurse, Rita Batchley, signing out and infusing that self-care one sip at a time.